Imagine, imagine all those work contracts, right? Like we own everything you think, right? Like while you're on the job.
Wow. Yeah. That's what it is right now, right? We own everything you do. And
yeah,
if
but
you
they
don't read
can't
it,
tell. I mean, they don't know for sure what you're thinking. It's
right.
really
Yeah.
just like what you actually got onto some paper proposal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What you typed into your computer, but like you probably got all the good stuff still locked up in your head. And if your company, you know, can just tap into that, they probably will write that into the future contract.
Please welcome John Gaeta. John is an Academy Award-winning designer and inventor. You might recognize his revolutionary work in VFX from Matrix Trilogy. I was fortunate to work with John on numerous projects in the past decade. This episode, however, we focused on what's happening now and what's ahead of us. We covered topics such as volumetric graphics, VR, AR and mixed reality, AI, and more. Strap yourself in and let's go.
Yeah, we talk from our shelters. Yeah, it's a strange experience because at first it was very scary seeming, and so unexpected to go into lockdown, which probably nobody in this country has experienced since maybe World War II, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
where there might have been some kind of like drills, you know, that folks had to do because of possible invasion or something. But it is disconcerting to get put into lockdown, and but at the same time, there's a strange, sublime sort of joy that goes with it, being sort of in a quiet time, and it's a massive social experiment to see what it's like to pause from being the hyper productive America.
Yeah,
it has its pros as much as cons.
Is any of it is like concerning to you? You know, I look at it from perspective of coming from a communist country. I kind of grew up in that environment where, hey, like if government decided to do a lockdown or a curfew or anything like that, it was just totally up to their discretion. They could just drum up any reasoning to do so and then just do it, right? So there's obviously like I guess a moral dilemma. Because like, A, we don't have enough information, or maybe we do, but then like how much liberty we're willing to give away for safety, all of those things, right?
Yeah, it's a Pandora's box. I mean, 9/11 and this are, you know, two experiments in, you know, sort of willfully giving up freedom.
Yeah,
because of fear of something that seems, you know, it's hard. It's hard to. I mean, the violence of 9/11 was, you know, made it pretty easy for people to accept changes. And in fact, a lot of changes occurred in the decade, you know, that came after, slowly but surely. But it's definitely a different world post 9/11 in the United States. But still, it feels like, you know, you still are in a free country. But this has a much more sort of like there's potentially a real danger with the you know, the social acceptance of allowing yourself to be monitored and to, you know, abide by something that's it's kind of like a very soft version of martial law in a way.
Yeah, yeah, almost giving tickets for hiking and stuff like that.
I don't say that disagreeing with doing it, because I think we all know why we have to do it. It's important. Yeah. We have to prevent people from dying, but it is a Pandora's box, right? Like if we start making you know, apps that basically allow the sort of perpetual monitoring of everywhere we go and every person we interact with, which of course we know we already know that that's going on.
Yeah.
But now we're going one step further, where we're about to allow the sort of the monitoring, the sort of statewide monitoring, right, of all of our interactions, right, in order to work.
Yeah. Do you think that's going to happen, honestly? I mean,
I think
Go ahead.
They're starting to do it in other countries. They're starting to experiment with it.
Yeah, but America is different. I feel like, you know, I'm looking at California, for instance, and like the reaction of Californians to the lockdown. You know, first everyone's sort of like being compliant and like, okay, yeah, we're doing this for a greater good. But then once more data started coming out, and then like completely ridiculous restrictions that make no sense, like, hey, why you're closing hiking trails? Like, that's outside, right? That should be pretty much open. Makes absolutely no sense. And then arbitrary closing of beaches, like not all of them, but just arbitrarily like specific regions, like Orange County, for instance. Like, okay, Orange County is closed, but why not San Diego? Like, what is, I mean, both are populated areas, you know, like, it's just like, I feel like Californians are seeing through the bullshit a little bit, you know, and
well, it just goes to show that even the most well-meaning of efforts, right, it's pretty difficult to really have continuity in communications to everybody, right? Like, yeah. Even with the best of intentions and like literally daily press conferences by certain governors to constantly update and feed information, which I think is actually better than, in certain ways, that has actually been better than we're accustomed to, right? Like just perpetual offering of info, but yet you can't parse through it, right? There's just so much of it, and it like happens every day, and so you can't really get a handle on the rationale of a lot of things, because it's all in flux. It keeps changing. At any rate, I was, in the beginning of your question, going to a simple acknowledgement that occasionally it feels great to be sheltering in place. Right. It's like occasionally it's borderline joyful, right? Yeah. If you're lucky enough to be able to have some semblance of productivity, you know, it's a real crisis for people who must go out and have to face that fear every day on our collective behalf. But you know, for me, you know, I've tried to use the last 6 weeks to write, to think, to develop stuff, to try to do things that I don't normally get much time to do. Right. It's like forced the opportunity in a way. Right. So I'm trying to use the time. Yes. Speaking of, they're howling outside of in the neighborhood right at this. It's 8:01. Do they do that down there where you are?
No, I don't think they are.
I'm up in Marin, and like clockwork, every night at 8:00. Without fail, neighborhoods all around here every single night, and there's no slacking whatsoever. They've been howling.
What do you mean by howling? Like,
they go out onto their porches and they howl, you know, in support of, you know, people on front lines.
Right. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, LA doesn't give a damn.
They don't.
Yeah.
No one goes out on a balcony and
No.
serenades their
People.
neighbors.
No. People here is like, Corona. What Corona? Everyone's out. Yeah. It's kind of weird. Yeah. You know, this what you're saying. Yeah, I can hear actually howling. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. No, they are. They do. They do their bit. I mean, the neighbors all around me really give it a good try every single night.
It's really, yeah, it's crazy. I do jive with what you said about that other countries are doing it are doing like this sort of, I guess it's contact tracking. I think that's what they, or contact tracing. Yeah, that's what they're calling. China is like going obviously above and beyond with like pretty much mandatory apps, IDs, and if you don't have it, we'll close you down.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing about this is, I mean, you know, we're in the middle of it. It's been how long? A month and a half, or 2 months,
more or less.
But and you know, we're chatting about it in the moment, like, you know, many people, like all colleagues, friends, you know, this is like being in a science fiction movie. Oh, this is you know, this is going to cause some things to happen, and yeah, it is. It's going to accelerate certain things, good and bad, and it's going to undoubtedly accelerate, you know, sort of slouching towards a surveillance state. You know, it might feel a little bit friendlier in this country, but it's actually much more powerful because of our platforms. We actually have, you know, capabilities that will, you know, we'll see if things go. What was it like after 9/11? Back to that, like the Patriot Act, right? And basically declaring that the United States is in a perpetual state of war, which I don't believe. I'll have to check this, but I don't believe we've ever revoked it. No.
It's still on.
Patriot Act 2. I don't believe we've ever actually undeclared war.
I think it's still on. Yeah.
Rightio. So that's like a long time. And
almost 20 years.
And then all of the and then all of the allowances, you know, to protect and secure. Is there going to be a version of that is sort of a mutation of that's going to happen because of this as well? That's going to go, go inside the country now, and now really get to an individual level. And if we have to contact trace for the next 2 years, then that's going to be an awful lot of information about the patterns of people.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because, like, I'm reading information that the more and more data comes out, the more it seems like there's quite a substantial amount of people that are completely asymptomatic. I think UCLA did antibody testing on like 1,000 people, and out of the 1,000, 4% were tested as positive. Meaning that since January they did have coronavirus, which made them believe that anywhere between 300,000 to like 600,000 Californians alone had the virus, which is like 80-fold more than what the official numbers are saying.
And Stanford did a similar test just recently too. I believe them.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know what to think of it. I mean, what are we supposed to do? I mean, we're just going to have to go forward.
Yeah. I'm curious about the technology that is going to come out of it, and obviously like contact tracing and any kind of surveillance technology is going to obviously be very controversial. But I remember reading an article that when the 2008 collapse happened, that was the time where right after that, some of the most innovative apps came out shortly after. Like that was a moment where, you know, the society started to basically adjust to the new reality and coming up with ideas that made the life somewhat better, you know, like Uber and I think it was like some of the social media platforms that came out because of it as well. Instacart, like all of those sort of like instant delivery sort of methods, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, not to get heady about it, but you know, I was chatting with Lana Wachowski the other day, and we were talking about mechanics of storytelling and things that she sort of, not just in storytelling, but just in human history, she likes to analyze, examine, take note of. And last time I was chatting with her, she was making a point about how the most explosive change for good occurs, and bad, but occurs during times of maximum uncertainty. Right. Like just the energy that comes of that, right? Produces, you know, whole magnitudes of change, you know, good and bad.
Yeah.
And it's a necessary thing, right, to evolve. Let's hope that there are, you know, remarkable good things. Certainly the community thing is one that I think a lot of people were forgetting. And it's returned in an unexpected way, almost like, you know, going back in time to your childhood in a way where you felt it more.
Yeah.
But as far as technology, let's hope that there are definitely positive things to come out, because they're definitely, you know, I'm mostly concerned about, you know, that this is going to give license to, you know, groups to really ratchet in and apply some of this capability that is up to now has been legally, you know, just barely prevented.
Right. Yeah. 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 It makes me think about, you know, the Constitution and some of the rights that Americans can enjoy that other countries don't have. And, you know, the judicial system and the fact that the government can get sued for, you know, unlawful things. But then, and that kind of makes me like, okay, you know, there's a lot of resilience in the country when it comes to like massive changes like that. But then, like, yeah, looking at the Patriot Act and how it's still going and all of those things, like, oh, wait, it's still on, you know, like they managed to do that and people kind of accepted it and no one's looking back.
I mean, the other thing is, you know, like, it's hard to be creative and it's hard to, you know, sort of really sort of force yourself out of your comfort space unless something is confronting. And again, it doesn't always have to be pain, you know, it doesn't have to be tragedy. That does work for a lot of artists, though. Shock,
right?
You know what I mean? You know, and weirdly, like, so, like, yeah, this thing is going to shock evolve the world. It really is. It's going to shock evolve the world. We'll see. I mean, like, we'll see if it really gets to the front doors of many, like it's in hot spots. And so it's without a doubt, New York is shock evolving again, right?
Yeah.
Twice in 15 years it gets such a sudden, right, disruption. And it's a place where it's really an epicenter of, it's like a microcosm of the world in a way.
Right.
So we'll see how good the art is in 5 years. We'll see.
Yeah. I'm curious. There's going to be a lot of technology that comes out. New York specifically, I mean, they've been hit hard, and I wonder how it's going to affect the population, meaning like how many people will hey, like it's kind of dumb. We're living like right on top of each other in such a close proximity, you know, and it's expensive as hell. I wonder how it's gonna change, you know, the demographics of cities as well. How many people will realize like,
Yeah, I know. It's like every aspect of the way life is could get
yeah,
screwed with here. Like, what are we supposed to do? Go back into these buildings where it's like, what are companies supposed to do? Like suddenly try to figure out how to make buildings that are like Forex, or like companies need warehouses now in order to like space people, or what are you gonna like? Start setting up cubicles that are starting to use airspace because you can get someone just a little bit further away from you. It's actually going to be a major problem. Maybe we're all going to work from home. A lot of people are going to work from home actually from now on, which will either save a lot of money on real estate, or they're just going to use the same real estate for less people. But if you think about it, I mean, will the productive output of America actually decrease because people are not, piled in, right, working for guaranteed ridiculous hours, right? Because essentially, that's our culture. That's what we do. We're like just, power, and that you can just tell that's going into a diffuse place, right? Like there's just. It's difficult. I mean, like, actually, it works both ways. Sometimes you could achieve things, in these sheltered, isolated places and times that are difficult to achieve at work, right? Work is distracting as much as it is a focusing tool, right? Occasionally there's going to be like, I don't know, remarkable things that can happen by allowing people to do this, right? There's no doubt that it'll increase wellness, right, to some degree.
Yeah, no commuting.
Wellness, right? It could increase, just shifting some of our work life to home or partially at home it will decrease the amount of time that we are commuting and wasting time that we're neither working nor with friends and family, and that could contribute to wellness. But at the same time, unless, your home station is on some perpetual video, live video, so that your other workmates and your boss, right, can be aware of whether you're doing your thing or not. Who knows? Maybe productivity will actually start to bend. And, that's probably a good thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think in creative fields and whatever, I mean, looking at Silicon Valley, for instance, and looking at Hollywood, looking at video games, I think those are the areas that, although are like, I think they're going to be disrupted as they are right now, but you can tell how flexible those industries are, and mostly because of the nature of how the work is done, right? So, for instance, video games are probably the least affected with this situation, mainly because everything is done on computers. There's obviously some areas of video game making where it's a little more difficult if you're not in the studio, like sound. We have to have all of a sudden like this expensive sound equipment at home, which is very difficult to organize. But like artists and animators, level designers, like all of those guys who work on video games, they can do the same work working from home. The only difference is how often you meet, and sometimes actually the less frequent meetings mean also that you actually are doing work instead of wasting time being distracted all the time. Same with film, although with film it feels like the live action element of it is going to really need to figure out how they are doing things. I wonder how it is with Silicon Valley, like with those companies that do rent those large spaces just to have like engineers, enjoy free coffee, and then they realize that having meetings on Zoom or something is as much productive without paying that huge amount of rent.
Yes, there's probably a lot of, yes. I mean, there's probably a lot of people that are used to going into their, chef-enabled cafeterias and, having the, special breakfasts, in the
Yeah.
beanbag chair lifestyle starting to disappear. That could be problematic for some people,
Right.
right? How are you going to crack the next greatest compression scheme if you're not in a beanbag having, your eggs rancheros each day?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just curious how it's all gonna develop. The disruption is there. Speaking of which, you've been. I mean, we worked together on quite several projects now. I think the first project we worked on was back in 2011. That was the Jupiter Ascending. That was I was actually introduced to you through my friend Marek.
That's right.
Yeah. And we worked on a bunch of projects together, and most of the time, I mean, all of them were offline. Basically, what we're doing now, that would be like our regular meeting.
Every project you and I have ever done, and there's actually been a bunch, right?
Yeah.
We've always done it like this,
Yeah.
right? I'm very used to working. You see, my favorite way of working is, if I'm working on a creative project, really it's about like, what is it about, and what is the universe that we're trying to, sort of envision, and who are the most interesting people, no matter where they happen to live, right? That might be great work on this particular project. So I've been, an advocate of like the virtual office thing forever, because really it's like you can work with the best people, right? Because you're not really going through all the logistics of making everyone come to a spot. I mean, there's definitely time for that when, like the jobs that you and I have worked on have must have been, they're like high concept, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to like some latter phase where people are really drilling down and starting to, kind of art direct components and elements in a very exacting way, for execution. But my favorite phases of projects are actually the phases that you and I have gotten to work on, which is like really kind of reaching out far out, ideas about characters or world moments, evocative stuff. So yeah, I'm like, I'd be happy if that's the only thing I did, is just like start things. It's kind of like what I do is mostly start things. I think that there are people who are really like, world-class executors, and they, can deliver, the most astounding media experiences because they are so disciplined in the process, right, of making things and finishing things. And that's not, that's not what I want to spend most of my time doing. It's really, it's really such a full focus, type of end of the process. But I like the way, for example, we used to work only on, story moments, and then, over the last, probably at this point, like 5, 6, 7 years, we started shifting from, that's a thing that that's a sort of science fiction type, moment in a story that you would see in a film about the future, or, and we've shifted over the time to, no, that's what you're going to do. Yeah. and it's the same art, basically. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like, that's how things have changed. Right. Like now it's like, we want to feel these kinds of these moments. So it's actually been kind of, enjoyable don't you think? Right, to ideate,
Yeah.
you know, insane, possibilities for, experiences of people.
It definitely opens up the way you think about things in general, and how those things do connect with film and books and comic books and everything we kind of experience in science fiction before. I don't know if you had a chance, for instance, to listen to Joe Rogan's podcast with Elon Musk, the recent one, which they were talking about Neuralink, among other things. But
I think I can't remember if I didn't see all of it. I've seen excerpts.
But when I was listening to that part, it was like, oh, that's just generally Ghost the Shell, like it's exactly that.
Yeah. I'm trying. Yeah, I would like to talk to him actually, just to figure out what has actually contributed to his perspectives there. I mean, what is he reading? What is he watching? How is he? Well, certainly, he has some conflict, as do most of us, with regard to making that which he fears most, right? Like being at the leading edge of making that which he fears most. And I had that strange feeling years ago when we were starting to work on, virtual, humans and things like that. And, for like, 20 years or so, it's gone from, fiction to, okay, now really a lot of that is becoming feasible, and you're starting to feel these things that you wondered about, right? And you were just creating concepts about years ago. And like all things, there's a beginning, and the beginning is generally like clunky and innocent, like just getting stuff to work. And we've just been going through getting stuff to work the last 5 or 6 years, right? 7 years, 8 years. And in fact, we know that there's been experiments that go back decades, and, the 60s and 70s, right? And but now things are getting fairly sophisticated, and we're getting past that. And so the things I wondered 20 years ago about, like, okay, is this inevitably going to be bad? Right? Like we're making things that are like for, cautionary tales, made in a highly imaginative way. And that felt really great in all ways. But, what happens is over time, people figure out, they like reverse engineer, these creative concepts. And now they're like, it's like, for example, when Spike Jonze, he made that movie Her, right? The relation. And back then, those agents were really robotic and, barely functional. And at the time, it seemed outlandish that they would be used, in a, more and more like quasi relationship building, emotive sort of way. And now really it's really what everyone is going to pursue, or pursuing right now in earnest. So it is kind of scary, and it's all these little building blocks coming together, and then all you need is like some sort of crazy catalyst to make all of these toys for techcos turn into something that the mainstream actually starts doing, like, say, for example, like a pandemic. Right, where suddenly it makes sense to spend more and more hours immersed, or right.
In a situation like that, having like those super immersive, unrecognizable, from reality experiences would be just like, oh, it's like the replacement of Netflix in a way, like a future replacement of Netflix.
I think that that's going to be one of the things. Well, one of the things, I mean, literally, it's only been 6 weeks. It feels like we've been in a completely sort of like alternate reality for who knows how long, right? These 6 weeks, the time is really hard to judge these last month and a half being sheltered, because it's like twilight time. It's like this, you know what I mean? It's not real, right?
Yeah.
And but like strangely, just in that short period of time, all of the like, you know, the prior 5-6 years, there's all these folks who are like trying to, you know, advocate the you know, the sort of you know, the promise of and reason for things like virtual reality and immersive, you know, media, how it can be transformative, you know, on and on and on. But it's like a conversation happening with a very few people, really, relative to the world. And so it's like its own little echo chamber, which has been a wonderful echo chamber to listen to and be in sometimes. But but all these theories that like, oh, this is going to be, you know, incredibly important and required and all this stuff, all of that just, in a sense, got validated in the last month, right?
Yeah,
like
pretty much.
In the worst possible way. Like, you know, you're like, you would have hoped that people chose to just go into immersive worlds and spend time doing all that stuff, was mostly just for, you know, positive experiences of a new kind, right? Imagination expanding experiences, and even, you know, sort of learning, knowledge transfer, all sorts of things that immersive will, in fact, you know, help, you know, to transcend. But no, it's a pandemic, right? That like is likely going to be the catalyst, right? So no more really not a lot of argument left why, you know, society might need a backup plan if they can't actually physically interact. So
yeah, one of the more grounded examples of it is theaters, movie theaters. I almost feel like that industry is on the cusp of just being completely done. I don't know how they are going to open up. And, you know, kind of interesting story that comes along with it that just was released recently, where Paramount just decided to drop AMC completely for the release of Trolls. I think it was Trolls.
Yeah.
And they released it on just Netflix, and saw more. They made more money within a month of playing it just online than in the movie theaters for like a year. That they would make in a year, or like in a season, right? Which just like AMC was lashing out, like, we were not going to release any Paramount movies ever again. It's like, okay, you're shooting yourself in the foot. But
folks have been talking about doing that like since it was possible to do that. Right? Like it's just been like waiting for a reason, and it's gonna be a wave now. It's absolutely, you know, going to be, I hate to say it, but like really it is going to like break the back of the theater system. No doubt about it. It was barely hanging on. And the fact is that like, it's actually really fun to go to a theater nowadays, because it's the only ones I go to are ones where, you know, there's less chairs and it's like a whole experience, and you order food and drinks, and it's fun, right? Like it's a thing to do. But I can't imagine that actually holding up as a profitable distribution system any longer, like mass distribution. No, right? Nice.
I don't think so.
Nice entertainment experience. So probably, you know, change go under, and theaters, you know, the ones that are left are going to all be, hopefully, not all, but like many will be like, hopefully increasing the type of experience you could have. You know, if they can get people to come.
Yeah, I think that too. And, you know, one of the aspects of it, like the crude sort of quote unquote virtual reality representation that can happen with it is, you know, for someone who wants to have that theater experience without going to theater, they just slap on the goggles and enable the theater, and they watch the movie in the theater mode. Like they feel like they're sitting in the chair. They could have that experience with family. I could see a technology that moving forward, where maybe you just put glasses on or something, not necessarily this whole goggle system, you know?
I mean, it's, you know, I've spent I've invested myself fully into that direction. I think that not just to distribute, passive linear, but just to like, have volumetric media in general. All that's definitely coming. I mean, like people can be impatient. People are very impatient.
Yeah.
They like, they feel they want to chalk up all of these early experiments as fails, and it's hard to get human beings to do things they've never done before, like, having volumetric holographic content, or VR, what have you, is really foreign for anyone who grew up their entire life not with that, which is most of us, all of us. The only way that all, gets taken up, and it will get taken up, is, the younger generation, right? So we're like not far away from. When I say not far away, I'm like inside this decade, no doubt, right? We're going to have, glasses that can produce, cinematic fidelity, holographic, wherever you are. And there'll be glasses by the end of the decade that will be able to go from mixed reality to virtual reality and to zero, right?
Yeah.
And, over time, that'll something that you can, just wear on your face all day, like your glasses, and they will be your glasses.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. It's definitely coming. Will everyone do it? Well, I think a lot of adults today are maybe not going to do it, a lot, but there's no doubt in my mind, like kids and teenagers are going to do it like all day, all the time.
Yeah. They're already sitting in front of computers playing Fortnite.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah. It's coming. There's no doubt about it.
I wonder how far we are from it. I mean, both of us, me and you, we kind of worked with that field for past couple of years, so we're kind of are aware of the possibilities and whatnot. But I looked at VR as well. More recently, I got the new headset, and VR is like the oldest of those technologies. And what was surprising to me is like. The headsets that they are not necessarily getting more, and they are getting more and more immersive in a way that the quality of the display is better and all that stuff. That obviously is coming along quite naturally because the technology progresses, but it feels like VR is sort of like stepping into a realm of AR slowly as well, where the goggles, like for instance the new Rift goggles, they have cameras everywhere, so you don't have to have sensors anymore. Those cameras actually, operate to sort of like record the environment and let the environment be scanned in a way to figure out where is what, so you can, place your markers and have your safe zone. So that's like a crude representation of scanning environment. But then on the other hand, you also have like the newest iPad, for instance, is using LiDAR technology to enhance the AR experiences. So like you have that mixed reality sort of experience with display that is sort of like projecting whatever else could be projected. I mean, the easiest to understand concept would be you scan your room with LiDAR. It understands the topology, where is what, and then you place furniture you would want to place from a store before you buy it, so you can actually see how it's going to look in the room. Like that's the lowest level. Yeah.
I've been like, I've been working in these mediums for a while now, and I could go, and I have furniture problems like everybody else. I have like certain rooms that really need some better thinking.
I'm not saying that
I don't have time to really see. The funny thing about it, sure,
I'm only giving it as this as an example, right? I'm not saying that that's the problem.
It's got to get much smarter. It's got to be like, not just like, place the 3D sofa, in the hole, that is half your room. It's got to be a little bit more like learn the room, scan the room, understand the room. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Give
a feeling. Like, I want this room to feel adventurous.
Right.
Right. And you get something adventurous. It's too much work to have. It's hard enough to make a decision with your significant others anyhow, right? Like, now you're in the mixed reality, right? Having to make a decision. That could get even more dicey.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, the other aspect of it is, I was looking at the scanning possibilities from iPad, and there's like iPhone apps now that do like photogrammetry real time. That kind of made me think about, all of the production that requires scouting, for instance, to be used that way, where instead of taking a large group of people to scout the area, you could take a smaller group with right equipment in the future and basically scan the environment and build.
100%. No, I mean, like, visualization in general and just simulation as, projected is going to be everywhere and everything, soon enough. I mean, the visual is, when I started in film, there was, computer graphics were barely used, really. That's how long. And we used to use computer graphics, when I worked for Doug Trumbull, who did 2001 and Blade Runner. He was really interested in inventing new technologies all the time. And we started using, CAD systems and, other systems to start trying to understand how to build things, right? Like computer-aided design. And then we started to want to figure out how they looked at different angles before we built them. So then we realized, if you could do that, then, maybe we can coordinate cameras so that we get the look that we figured out. And like visualization, like started a fair bit back, and back then Hollywood, was like, oh my God, those are extra costs. We can't, that's like frivolity. That's a new cost. We have never, had a space, in a budget that allowed for some of that. Right.
Right.
And, go from then to today where, whole films are being visualized. And the reason why it makes sense to do that is because you can make decisions in advance. You can calculate the scope and all sorts of things. You can work out really difficult problems and come in with plans, right? You can do very sophisticated things. And even the process of doing that unearths, things you never expected. You can discover, right? Something that never occurred and can suddenly create huge value. So does it make sense to bring that in the field? Absolutely, right? To go walking around even empty warehouse or a location and knowing in advance, let's say it's a location and you're going to build, into it, and just knowing in advance exactly how you might want to graft things in and everything, including like character action. You can, what the next wave, the next wave is absolutely, putting like simulation, events like, car stunts and action events and phenomena, all sorts of things, right? In live visualizations that you can look at on location, and which is kind of a weird thing so far as like, you in the service of making a great story that you're baking, on a 2D medium, which is essentially a sculpture that cannot be changed, right? This is what film is. Film is a sculpture. But, not long from now, we'll be, basically doing all that, not just viz and sim work, but actual execution in game engines, And I think the game engine companies should consider a different term for it soon, right? Because the engines are for everything soon. But like, if you're going to go through that trouble, at a certain point, you'll be able to capture all of that in a way that, you don't need to be held to a 2D output, a linear output, right? Like, you could basically easily imagine that you have all of that which you built as something that can keep going, right? That can be like live and dynamic and an interactive or immersive entertainment or other experience. And so it'll be very interesting to see if Hollywood can kind of evolve itself a little bit, where they're making, remarkable, great work, with the idea in mind that certain fans will want to actually literally get inside the destinations of these places and these stories, and that is absolutely doable. It's like doable now. So we'll see if you can't get people in a theater, and you want to do more than just have somebody consume the whole experience in a binge experience, which is fun to do.
Yeah.
And we do it like every day now. But, how much more interesting would it be if, creatives made it possible for the fans to actually go in and through their PCs or, at some point, consumer VR and mixed reality in this decade, right? In this decade, next 3 to 7 years. That would be like a really smart way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Hollywood is sort of starting to slowly, step in that direction. I think Jon Favreau is one of those guys who is really focused on new technologies and trying to implement new things. Spearheading Mandalorian, for instance, and the live set technology with Unreal Engine. That's sort of like a step of, hey, we can actually make movies without green screens and actually have everything almost ready as they are being shot. And just the idea of like taking a shot and then I'm not sure about the lighting conditions, let's just change time of day real time and re-record, and then you have like different variations and you can optimize the way you work. I think that's one of the closest steps in terms of like how things are going to change filmmaking wise. But then following up to what you said also in terms of like how the sets are being simulated and built. I mean, I could imagine a situation where you have your VR, XR, AR experience where you sit and watch the film, but instead of watching the film as you would normally do on a 2D screen, you're sort of placed in those set pieces and the environment is around you. Let's say you're watching Avatar and you're like all of a sudden sitting on the rock in Pandora's forest, and the whole situation is kind of like happening around you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have thought about that a little bit. Two things. First thing, it is great that, they did Mandalorian like that. And, if both, they're both groups that came together for that are interesting. Like there's the Lucasfilm side, and then there's Jon Favreau, right? So Jon Favreau is definitely, he's into taking risks, experiments with the process, right? And what he did for Lion King, what he's doing, actually experimenting in VR with gnomes and goblins, and he's got the right mind for it. But then you have Lucasfilm, and I was at Lucasfilm, 5 years ago, and so was Kim Libreri, CTO of Epic, right? And we were doing a lot of experiments back then, not just us two, but ILM and Lucasfilm, different groups in there. And there's a lot more that you can do than what's been done on Mandalorian. I think the Mandalorian ended up as a hybrid approach where it would be like, it was more used, I feel like it was more used for efficiency in layout, rapid layout.
Right.
And there's definitely a lot farther that one could go, not just making in-camera shots, but if you finish the 3D world, not just make it work in certain angles or limited, right? Semi-dressed to camera, right? If you finish it, then you can go there.
Yeah, that's true.
You could release it as a place to go, right? These places. And we did experiments at Lucasfilm, all different experiments. We made, our own large cave, basically, and could do full field of view holographic immersive.
Right.
And so, you know, live scenes could be put in there, but so too could live actors as well. So you could, what we did these experiments where, you know, you'd be wearing stereo glasses, you'd be tracked, so your perspective is always correct, right? So like it's stereo, but it's always correct. I look over here, and it's been done for a long time, like automotive industry, aeronautics, you know, they would use caves, science, you know, scientific visualizations and such. But we started experimenting with characters, right? Like just bringing in like Star Wars characters in a Star Wars world, and other types of things. So there's definitely like a time at which you know it will make a lot of sense to like sort of close the loop, right? Where you're not just using it for design, and you're not just using it for general layout, where the end product is strictly only one, like two-dimensional output. I would say that's where you'll see the most interesting innovation in, you know, for certain types of, you know, projects.
Right. Do you think the barrier of that, and the reason why it's being sort of slowly progressing or not progressing as fast as the technology allows it to, is just the consumer's behavior, like getting consumers and people who are enjoying the media to sort of like adopt and understand the new technology and enjoy it? I mean, VR specifically is very difficult because not everyone has a VR headset.
No, for sure. I totally agree. I mean, VR is going to always be, you know, it's like the difference between wearing these and putting on, you know, a set of Bose, you know, headphones. Like the person who puts on look at yours, right? The person who puts those on.
Giant ones.
Well, you know, you're an early adopter. You're like, you know, you're highly motivated, and you know, but you're like a niche group, and it's kind of going to always be, it's never going to get to an extraordinary scale until it's ubiquitous as wearing sunglasses or simple regular glasses, right?
Yeah.
And that will definitely be possible. You know, I can't put a number on it, but my assumption is that the deep end of this particular decade will see some pretty absolutely stunning, you know, capabilities, and attractive enough for sure for you know, a certain type of person, you know, a young person will start doing it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that, honestly. You know, I mean, there's so many things we could experience. I mean, Ready Player One, the movie, is sort of like a VR aspect of what's possible, or what could be possible if you can immerse yourself into like simulated worlds. And then, you know, there's always the question, like, okay, in order to create a realistic immersive world, you have to put like so many man hours to make that happen. But then on the other hand, you have AI that could build
procedural worlds. Without it, yeah, for sure. No, that's the other whole thing. I mean, like, again, getting all we have to do. I really, it's gonna, the latter end of this decade it's gonna be pretty insane. You know, for sure, massive procedural open worlds are coming, and so too are you know, super ergonomic, ubiquitous hardware, you know, end of the decade, I think. And that's not long to wait, and it will be absolutely, it'll be like, it'll transform certain peoples.
What's your take on AI specifically? What do you, I mean, we hear about AI from pretty much all angles at the moment. Like everyone, whether they like it or not, is experiencing AI. You just have to open the Google tab and you're interfacing with AI basically. You just open YouTube and you're interfacing with AI. I wonder do you have more more, not necessarily hope, but you're more excited about what's coming with it, or you're like a little bit fearful, just like Elon Musk is a good example of like
It's both.
doomsday.
I feel no. I mean, it's going to be. Here's the problem. It's like the problem is it will be in both ways. Some of them it'll evolve humankind, right? Like it's going to evolve humans, and it's also potentially going to take us down, right? Like it could honestly, if in not long, people are able to have essentially onboard awareness of everything, right? Like, the whole spatial computing idea is that, essentially, anything that might be learnable, right? And anything that is known, right, that can basically be accessed, through the web, now transposed in space over Earth, right?
Right.
Means that any person could potentially just be walking around like a, human supercomputer, right? They could, be at least have insights to almost any sort of invisible, incredibly difficult to understand, information.
Right.
Which is why I think, it's not just like, tagging your favorite Indian restaurant. It's going, people will be able to understand the patterns of life. They'll be able to understand social networks in a real world way, right? In the most interesting of ways. So just think about that, like AI providing insights to people on board all the time. And the only reason we don't have it on board all the time is because, you have to stop living in order to start messing with these things, with these phones.
Yeah.
These phones are actually one of the worst things to ever happen, even though they're incredible, right?
Yeah.
They've completely broken, right, all sorts of important social, benefits. So, and there's no way we're turning back. So those are definitely going to end up on certain people's eyes. And those people who know what to do with that are going to have like a form of a superpower. They're going to be amplified people.
Yeah. That's what Neuralink was when Elon was expecting it. That's sort of like what he was. I mean, when I was listening to it, it's like it's basically Matrix Neo getting like upload, martial arts. I want to know karate now. That's basically how it's all might develop in the future.
It'll definitely feel like magic at first. I mean, I haven't seen their tests, but I could definitely see a great benefit of allowing the handicapped be able to manipulate their spaces again.
Yeah, that's I think the first use case, like allowing.
That's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But that's just even a starting point. I mean, like, human beings controlling robots and drones. I mean, there's like good and bad. Like I could just see the the outcome of some of that. I can't even imagine the first test of that. Like, when's the first test? Hey, Neuralink, are you testing having people, fly drones? What are you doing?
Right.
I remember seeing an image, actually. It's actually years old. Remember seeing an image of Chinese sort of, obviously someone in the military, two young people, and one of them had basically a whole skull cap, this sort of sensor cap, and they had a drone flying up in front of them, right? So they're like thought navigation, right?
I think they can do that. They can do that with mechanical limbs. I've seen tests like that in US done already, where they would have like those giant helmets with, little needles sticking out, cables, and then the little arm being controlled. Another one was like the distant conversation, like sending, I'm gonna say hi to you, you're on the other side of the world, we're all connected through this sort of like helmets, and then saying hi to one another. This is sort of like the very crude but non-invasive, I guess, experiments. But the Neuralink would be just like you literally have little wires connected directly in your brain. I think there's like, he was saying like it was 5 years away from them doing like actual use cases of it, or like
I'd like to do it.
You'll be the first one to test.
Why not? I mean, I want to see if I want to levitate stuff. I mean, there's two ways to levitate stuff. I mean, you could, the same thing goes with another thought experiment would be, people are for a while now been trying to map, what parts of your brain light up when you think certain things.
Right.
And there was all these interesting tests at Berkeley along those lines. And they did these tests where, I'm trying to remember the fellow's name. I met him once, but they did this test where they, they spent years trying to figure out subject see conscious, not unconscious, but subject sees image, it lights up here, right? And years they're mapping out, as best they can. And then they want to test to see how good, of a job they have in codifying things. And so they do this test where they put a person in an fMRI machine, and then they, so they're basically going to, real time sort of measure. But then they would put these screens above them, and they would show them, I think like it was like a documentary, or it was a film of sorts, right? So they awake person, seeing this film, and then, you have these scientists, and all they're doing is they get this, recording of where the brain is lighting up. And then they did something else insane, which was they, use their sort of, understanding to, say, okay, whenever a region of the brain that we think means that is occurring, then algorithm that goes and picks a frame from, like countless, YouTube videos, right? Like, so
right.
Basically go to YouTube and find a frame that looks like what we think is being seen by this person, right? Just by using the brain map. And so they made their own. They made this was like a long time ago, right? It was like I think it's 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And so they made their own movie like this, right? Like frame for frame, reconstructing based on what is it, right? And then you can go see it, right? You can see it on the on YouTube now, right? Like they show you the two running next to one another, and it's remarkable how close it is, right?
Right.
Like it gets it off. It's like a really insane movie where every frame is kind of morphing to the next frame because it's literally assembling it frame by frame.
Right.
So it's like this kind of like morph movie, and it's like getting it right. So they're figuring out enough. Okay, so let's take that premise. Let's say we get very, very good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you have that. So then you're like, okay, well, can you just think of something? Will it light up that part of the brain, right? So if I thought of a chicken, and my brain, I have some way of measuring my brain, and then you basically, instead of getting that YouTube frame, you basically get like a 3D game engine chicken, and you pop it out in front of you, and you see it with your mixed reality glasses. So you're like wearing your glasses, and you're like, whatever you think, you basically constructs.
Pops up, yeah, that's crazy.
Constructs in front of you, right? Or and you can share that with people. So I think that's essentially the construct, right? That's the beginning of the construct, right? I think you can do this. I would like to see if someone's watching this podcast, who would actually be able to run that test, right?
That would be that would be wild just to see that happen.
This is what I want to see. I would like to see. I think of something, and it pops up in front of me in mixed reality.
Right. It seems like the puzzle pieces are scattered but there, and it's just a matter of someone putting them together.
It seems doable.
Yeah, imagine like Twitch streaming with kids they're playing games and streaming them, and now you would have kids imagining things or building games real time and streaming them,
Exactly.
Yeah. So wild. I hope to see it. I mean, I know. One part of me
was younger.
Right. One part of me tells me like I don't want to see it because like as older I get, the more I kind of appreciate normalcy of life instead of like just going wild with everything. But on the other hand, like, damn, like if I wouldn't have to draw, but just like literally just get my ideas out there just by thinking of them, that could be very wild.
I can't even imagine. You would need to, but you would have iterative process. So
right, of course.
Yeah. So I wonder what the version of that is actually, right? Let's say.
Yeah, like constantly evolving picture.
Or does everything that come out, like, look, I mean, right now I'm talking to you, I'm trying to like, be with you here, but like, I'm also at the same time trying to think of a chicken, right? Now, how clear is that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Is that
exactly.
firing in the right spot? Is that spot really firing properly? Like I'm thinking of a just regular chicken, like a real farm chicken. Right.
Yeah.
Would we be able to understand that and get the right content?
It would be a chicken with my face because you're talking to me.
That would be, yes. That's what's going to happen. I mean, like in the beginning, it's going to be very messy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's going to require a lot of like legal paperwork for people to like, hey, like anything I'm thinking of that is appearing, I need a filter. I need a built-in filter that only I have to allow those certain things to show up.
Imagine all those work contracts, right? Like we own everything you think, right? Like while you're on the job.
Wow. I mean, yeah. That's what it is right now, right? We own everything you do. And if you don't read it,
I mean, they don't know for sure what you're thinking. It's
right,
really just like what you actually got onto some paper proposal, right?
Yeah,
what you typed into your computer, but like you probably got all the good stuff still locked up in your head, and if your company, can just tap into that, they probably will write that into the future contract.
Yeah, I would hope. I mean, this is probably what's going to happen, but I would hope most people would be like, oh no way, I'm going to do that. You have to pay me extra. But then knowing how artists work, like I'll do it for free because you're a big company. It's like, oh no. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little scary, but on the other hand, it's like I guess the roll up to when that's gonna be available and spread out worldwide, I think we're gonna have enough events and technologies that happen in the meantime that we will be either accustomed to it already and completely socialized with it almost, or allow our decisions to change the outcome, or like put those sort of like barriers of like, okay, maybe for the stream of consciousness that creates those virtual simulations, maybe there should be filters, because like what if some psycho starts showing streaming some weird shit, you don't want to have that.
Someone in Hollywood will think that's worth money.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, one thing
actually that doesn't exist that is going to happen, and is like, right now, these things that are called AIs. I mean, that we don't, the ones that we deal with the internet and all that, they're fairly, simplistic, and they're not really, they're not that sophisticated in regards to, what they're trying to do with you other than put your attention somewhere specific. And that's mostly what they're trying to do, usually in service to commerce or keeping you contained in somebody's platform or container, right? They're just kind of like in there trying to keep you steered in a way. But they're really simplistic, but they won't be actually, forever like that. They'll be fairly sophisticated because, they're perpetually learning. I mean, like they're perpetually learning, what, not just conversation, but like the meaning of conversations and then patterns of intent and interest and what are people engaged by, like on and on and on. There's like a lot more than just like, take me to a place. And, I feel fairly confident that they are on all the time. Like they're on all the time. And I do think there's probably quite a bit of research happening potentially behind the scenes trying to learn more than just, satisfy a request to go to a location. But to that end, I don't really trust any of them. And I don't think most people feel like they can trust a disembodied, voice from a machine.
Yeah.
But I do think that it would be a good idea if somebody produced essentially something akin to a personal AI, right? That is, built to be imprinted on you, or you to imprint on it in a way that's unconditional, right?
Right.
That there is nothing that can come between you and this AI in terms of this AI being your advocate and your, private security, your sort of like awareness system, right?
AI wars.
And what it would do is it would basically be able to see through the invisible things that mere humans can't, which is like, who's actually talking to me? I can't tell. I'm just a mere human. I can't tell that this thing talking to me over the phone or in a game or over the internet is real or not, or
right,
or if it's even the person they say they are. But if I had this sort of like a different kind of sixth sense, if I had like my personal AI that could go and basically say, no, I know exactly who that is, and they're related to this, that, and they do this to these people, right? And they're no good for you, right? If you give it.
Yeah.
Is that your kids?
Yeah, that's my daughter. She's having fun.
It's Saturday night.
Yeah, it's like a personal security system that filters. Because that's one of the things, like, we're talking about AI and like the sort of like looking even at the deep fakes, how good they are getting compared to like what they were 2 years ago. And now, you can still, if you're very well versed in VFX, or if you know enough about VFX, you can tell that's not realistic. But some of the deep fakes are like unrecognizably well done, And then having it like this personal AI saying like, oh, this is a fake. Like that's not a real thing.
So like, think about that. Like the next Google scaled company might be the one that basically undoes all the other companies, all the other platforms, because they've created this thing, right, that is in service to none of them, to no corporation. It's just, or government.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like this isn't just like, capitalist surveillance bots. You could be in a different kind of country and it's just, political surveillance bots that you're contending with. So it would be the idea of the century if you could create basically an onboard, totally benevolent, unconditionally loving AI with incredible capabilities to see into the invisible spaces of the web, even the dark web, and help you.
Yeah, who would make that happen though? Like it would have to be someone pure. Yeah, who would make that? Someone smart, someone pure.
There's probably a person or two. Yeah, there's probably a person or two. It's just like any movie we might see. There's a person or two that's inside one of these super monolithic, super powerful Silicon Valley or otherwise companies, right?
Yeah.
And or maybe they're in the government, maybe they're somewhere else, and they're thinking, I'm working with the most powerful AI technology ever devised on planet Earth. You know, I know what it's capable of, and I also know that should one day this company, which currently is being run by good enough, you know, leaders that haven't succumbed, right, maybe to Patriot Act 2, but maybe one day, like 2 or 3 CEOs later, they are completely co-opted. Right. They're totally co-opted, right? And hopefully no big problem in the world occurs where, you know, certain, you know, government might need that kind of superpower to roll back, you know, perhaps a cyber attack, whatever. At any rate, imagine you're a person who works at one of these companies now, right? For the moment, making the world a better place, right?
Right.
But, you know, maybe it's not going to be that way. So maybe you should think about what you could do to, in case, you know, things got bad and these companies got co-opted by the wrong kind of people in the wrong climate, there has to be some sort of kill switch, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, like somebody inside these companies should figure out how to make a master kill switch for the most dangerous technologies they've created.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody in there could do it, right?
Yeah, it's like a current version of SSL and encryption for communications, or like a current version of, you know, VPNs, where, okay, like we have those companies that can track pretty much everything you do on the internet, but then there's this app you install and that gives you the privacy you want and need, and, you know, so like the corporate, like it prevents the corporate elements from like being too intrusive with your life, you know, like listening to what you say and then extrapolating it to like ads that are directly in front of you. And sometimes, like, unbeknowingly, you know, you have a conversation with a friend in front of a device and you're not even asking the device to record or do anything, but the device is doing it anyways, which is what I hear like Alexa is doing. Yeah, and then using that to give you recommendations. Like, what the hell?
You know, the kill switch is like some kind of combination of AI and virus, right?
Right.
Built from inside the very companies, right? Inside the very platform. Like it'll be harder. Well, I guess it could come from any direction, but like, you know, not necessary yet. But like, if our privacies, you know, get, you know, taken away, you know, even worse than they are.
Yeah.
It would be good for some people that still are, you know, have enough of a lifetime where they didn't ever have to worry about privacy problems like this, you know, to have the conviction to build, you know, just a kill switch in case it's needed.
Yeah, that would be nice. Having like a balance, right? Because like it's ever evolving and we are completely out of control. Social media sort of like pretty much decided even anonymously that our data belongs to them. Like they can do whatever they want with it. Most people are just not, I guess, giving a damn, signing off the privacy, you know, policies and whatnot. But then who reads like this, the jargon of, you know, whatever lawyers wrote 200 pages of like consent that you give to the company, and half of it you don't even understand, you know? So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know where it's all going. I mean, it's going in two directions.
Don't you think like a company like Google could potentially be run by an AI in about 30 years?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the
maybe less.
Less than that. And I would say the scariest part about it is
like the company is also, everything is run.
Right. Yeah, I can absolutely see that happen. The scary part that I see about it all is that when you have a company like Google and Apple, those companies are also producing quality life elements that are becoming integrated to almost like a critical point, meaning like payment systems and banking systems and whatnot. And all of a sudden you're sort of like almost in bed with the devil, right? Because you gave away all that information, but if you wanted to say stop, then you're okay, I don't have my credit card, I don't have my bank account, I don't have my self-driving car. Like all of a sudden I'm pretty much stranded. I cannot work from home because now all of a sudden I cannot use Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever. And how am I going to communicate with company that only uses that for security reasons, you know? And it's like, okay, yeah, it's weird. It's very weird.
Yeah, I think it's people have to take it really seriously, like really soon.
Yeah.
Because it's still early enough where you could, you know, in a free country, you know, create laws that sort of slow down the implementation, but they're not going to slow down the capability.
Right. Yeah.
Like people have to kind of start thinking about this really seriously.
I don't know if you've ever checked TikTok yet and what people produce over there.
Yeah.
I'm less hopeful based on what I see on the most popular platform and how people are, what people do. I mean, it's funny. It's some of the most funniest content you'll ever see, but people are dumb.
Yep, that's our perpetual 24-hour, you know, bliss machine. Imagine when that's immersive. You're just never going to get out of that. You're just going to be like a plant, right?
It's going to be Matrix, right? This is all where it's going. We're all going to be in Matrix soon.
If you think about it, you know, if Matrix was real, what would be like, I mean, like massive online games, right? But they still kind of look, you know, they look like graphics. They look like computer graphics. It's like, what, 10 years we're going to have worlds that are like stunningly real, and the ability to immerse completely in them. It's like not far.
Not far at all. And, you know, you look at some of the video games that are out there already, maybe not massively multiplayer games, but just video games or films where you literally cannot tell if it's real or not. But then like how technology is moving with even just RTX. I like looking at those RTX stacks. Again, this is like the crude version of what we're talking about, like the most primitive sort of like Stone Age version where RTX, you know, like you enable RTX on Minecraft and all of a sudden it looks like, you know, stylized obviously, but like realistic almost version of it, right? You said you have those, you know, reflections, global illumination, all that stuff, and the game looks vastly different. It's still the same game. It runs slower, obviously, because it requires all that computing, but it's like a night and day just by switching one thing off, right? Or one thing on. But that becomes real time, like the technology is moving to that point. So like I could see 10 years. I don't know if 10 years, I guess there would have to be like a heavy incentives, financial incentives for it. But
sure. How about having, you know, the next, you know, breakthrough immersive world be able to have like 500 million people in it?
Right. Yeah.
That's not inconceivable. You know, would they go to the world just because it looked like, you know, realistic? That wouldn't necessarily be the reason.
Oh, everyone would. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it depends on what you do there, right? But like, for sure. That's definitely going to be the motivation is going to be everything. It's going to be a massive social platform. It's going to be a massive economy.
Yeah.
Once one really gets up and running, I mean, Fortnite is already staggeringly impressive, and it's just a first baby step towards that idea.
Yeah. Minecraft is another version. Like, there's so many people playing Minecraft, and there's a bunch of games that already do that in a way, on like a very crude, very baseline level. But and the fact is, those are actual economies as well. Like, people do make money being on those platforms, which are technically speaking, they are supposed to be just entertainment, but in conjunction with other technologies like streaming, they all of a sudden become an actual or esports, you know, they become like a source of income for people. So, you know, I remember my mom telling me like, "You're gonna waste away playing video games," and now it's like parents are actually paying like professional players to coach their kids to become professional players, you know. So it's wild how it's all changing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But here, my thing is that like, the more I wind up working in it and have friends, you know, colleagues who do it really well, the more I see of it, the more it actually appreciates the opposite entirely. Like, so you're like, it's fucking hard to make something, you know, look not realistic is not the only measure. It's like, you know, compelling or interesting or present with you and all this, right? It's so much. It's and trying to understand, you know, what you have to do to sort of alter the perception, right, of a virtual object. And then you're like, okay, enough of that. And then you go and walk around the real world and you're like, you look at just you with your eyes, right? You're like, you can become astounded at how absolutely insanely powerful your eye brain system is. Right? Like you just look at and you don't even know if that's like the only way to see that stuff, because it's like it's the way that human beings are wired to see, but it doesn't mean it's the only possible way to see it. You know, just like you have machines, you know, like that can see, you know, depictions of shape and form and color and all that because they're sensing it differently, right? And so anyway, I like have wound up appreciating regular reality, actual reality, more than I ever thought, since I started realizing, you know what I mean, that there was a difference between it and something else.
Yeah. I think it's mutual for artists as well, who are working on the highest level of knowing, you know, different software and being able to create realistic environments and like really stunning art. And then looking back at traditional drawings and like really appreciating instead the fact that that takes a certain amount of patience and skill that normally you wouldn't have to have for digital art, for instance, right? Like the skill sets are so vastly different, but they're equally demanding. They're equally taxing for your brain, you know, to do it on the highest level. So I can totally see what you're saying in terms of like, how is, you know, deep dive into mixed reality and simulation, how that can make you to appreciate like everything else that is quite normal in the world.
It starts affecting normal. And, you know, same too with like, you know, there's people, I don't do this, but like I have friends who do like VR social, and, you know, it's their platform. So they work all the time in world, right? Like they don't have an office they go to, they just, you know, meet and they build and they work and they are in there for incredible hours a day, as are other people. And, you know, aside from that, then you just also have, you know, kids that are like playing video games for hours and hours to the point where you're dreaming about it. Like it's a memory. You're remembering your friends and you in world. And, you know, then you're starting to really like, that's kind of like one step from, and the fact of the matter is, you know, in VR, you're inside, so that can really actually create a different kind of, and the same's going to happen with mixed reality too, where, you know, whatever, 10 years, whatever it is. And there's some people that have, you know, perpetual, you know, dimensional holographic, you know, things, information all the time. That's then reality, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what's going inside your brain.
Yeah, and then you plug away, and everything is sort of like gray and normal.
And you remember that stuff, like it's memories, it's dreams, right? So now, like, okay, so now I live in a world where, you know, I can walk down the street and have, you know, Technicolor dinosaurs, and I do that every day. If I did it every day, if I was a kid that loved, you know what I mean, Technicolor dinosaurs, you know, I'd keep them on all the time.
Yeah, it would be like your daily habit, almost like a routine. There has to be a dinosaur. I have to have one. Yeah, and then the haptic suits and you know the technology that comes around with providing other senses as well. I think that's interesting. I'm interested in like if they're gonna develop technology that allows to have like the haptic suit experience without putting a suit on. Like maybe there's like some kind of laser beams or you
Yeah,
know something
yeah.
that provides that through like different means. You know.
There's a company. A company that is called Haptic Motion, and and then they bought Leap Motion or
Hmm.
Ultra Haptics, and Leap Motion. Then they merged together.
Right.
But you know, they've been working on the same tech for years, and you know, it's basically, you know, it's like some kind of beam transmission that like you know you can feel in space, buzzing and patterns and things like that.
Right.
Um, and it hasn't gotten really that specific yet. I mean, like the most specific is kind of like you feel like a plane or a button, right? And you can
Right.
or kind of feel a shape, but it's not really specific yet.
Yeah, I guess it's a long time away before that happens. I mean, but then you look at smartphones, like who would expect that? I mean, by the time you were working on Matrix, were you expecting you're gonna have iPhone 11 with the capacity that it has, right? It's like no way. And
Tricorder.
that's yeah, and that's just like barely even 2 decades away, you know. So yeah, crazy, man. We've been talking for an hour and a half. That's how we initially planned to
Okay,
do the podcast
are
for.
we done?
We could keep going
No, it's
forever,
good.
but but I know you.
I can hear your kids in the
Yeah,
background.
yeah. My kid is starting to get unruly. I
It's
have a
chocolate
ton
chip
of
cookie time.
questions. I have a ton of questions. I want to talk with you about Matrix at some point. Maybe we'll be lucky and have another one in the distant future or something and figure that out. But yeah, this was an awesome conversation.
You know, it's totally fun. Yeah, I don't usually do this, and it takes a little while to like settle down. But
Right. Yeah.
it was totally fun, for sure. Matrix is a subject that's on my mind a lot lately.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can chat about it
I'm
sometime.
super keen. All right, let's wrap it up here then. Anyone who was listening to the show, I appreciate it. Obviously, John, you were. I mean, we talk a lot normally because we work together, and so
We didn't even talk about anything that we worked on.
exactly right.
Not a single thing. That's good. That's good.
But you know, it's always fun. You know, like you are like one of my favorite people to always work with. Like ever since we worked on Jupiter, it's been like that pretty much. I have like my top 5, top 10, actually not top 10, top 5 people that I ever worked with.
I made it to 5.
Yes,
Really?
yes.
I'm inside the Mache 5. Wow.
Actually, top 3. You make it look like I'm such an important personality, but that's not true. And I can have favorite people to work with.
I'm not coming back on this show again unless I got to be up in the top 2. Or I'm
all right. You are in the top 2 for sure. I'm not gonna lie. You are in the top 2. And, I just want to be politically correct.
And you know, well, actually, you know that's true. I think that of you too, because you and our other friend Emmanuel, right? We've been working together for a while. So you're in my top 2, Mache.
Hell yeah! I'm super happy about that.
Reciprocation for. Anyhow, yeah, it was super fun.
Anyways, good chat. Awesome. Thanks, John.
We'll see you again.
Super fun times.
Cheers, man.
Take care.